Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Center podcast. I'm Amelia Zhivatovskaya, your host and founder of the Flourishing Center. We are training the change agents of the world and equipping them with research-based tools for healthy, happy, and successful living. And we're so grateful that you're here.
This episode is a practitioner profile, where we highlight ordinary people that are doing extraordinary things. Each practitioner is a graduate of the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program from the Flourishing Center. Find out the exciting ways that people are putting the science into practice in their work and how they use positive psychology in their lives with individuals, organizations, and communities to help them thrive.
Thanks for listening, and let's dive in.
Hello, everybody. For today's Positive Psychology Practitioner Corner, you guys are in for a treat because we get a double dose of two interviewees. Today, we've got Dr. Cecilia and Hannah with us, and these ladies have created an incredible endeavor called Twisting the Plot that you're going to get to know all about. Dr. Cecilia Dentino is a clinical psychologist and assistant clinical professor of psychology at Columbia University. She's a drama therapist with a private practice in New York City and an author. And Hannah Starobin is a psychotherapist with a practice in New York City and in Westchester. She's joining us from Westchester, New York, and Dr. Dentino from New York City. And something that you might not know is that these two have been friends for over 40 years. They met at an audition for musical theater together and have been connected ever since, and are now transforming the way that women over 50 are approaching asking the question of what now, what next, by integrating the science of positive psychology, clinical psychology, and all sorts of tools to help people navigate their life. I'm so honored to have them here with us and for them to tell you all about what they're up to. Welcome, ladies.
Hey, hi.
Hi, Amelia. It's great to see you.
Thank you. So tell us, what is Twisting the Plot?
Good question.
Question of the question of the last 5 years, right? We've been developing this. My husband keeps saying we're going to become a overnight success in a couple more years. So Twisting the Plot is it's our platform. Basically, it's a platform for women over 50, which includes workshops that Hannah and I are doing, and a course of change. And we're working on our podcast, and we do lots of writing, and we're working on a book. But Hannah, I want to tell them that when we first started, right? Like, I guess, I don't know, what would you say we started talking about this, like 5 years ago?
I'd say it was about 5 years ago.
Well, it was dark. We were dark. We both were over 50 and feeling like, what the heck is the next stage of life? Like, what are we supposed to be doing? Right? Hannah and I, we've been very good, right? We followed all the rules so far. We have our degrees, our careers, our children, right, Hannah? And I was saying, Hannah, and then I don't even know who I am. I called her one day and said, I looked in the window and all I saw was a dumpling, Hannah. I have no identity, right? She thought maybe I was hungry, but
I just kept sitting there thinking, this is it? What am I supposed to do now? That I'm supposed to just fade and sort of start to disappear? And which I had seen happen with my mother's generation and other people. And I thought, that's not what I want. I feel ready to do something.
Right. So, yes. And so, how we started, right, Hannah, was like from our point of view was like, this is a crisis. Right. I gave a few talks. Hannah gave a few talks about like the invisibility, women over 50. There's no maps. There really aren't any maps for women over 50 as to who to become or what to do. And so we were sort of going on that route, right, Hannah?
Yeah.
And then one day I was lamenting to Hannah, like, there's no maps. There's nothing for us to do. It's ageism. It's all over for women over 50. And then Hannah, if you know Hannah, she gets this little like glint in her eye sometimes. It's kind of like a little devilish. But she looked at me and she said, hey, maybe this is a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing. And it was like after that point, we thought, maybe this is an opportunity to make it up. To make up something new for women, to really create a pathway for women over 50. And that's around the time we looked you up, Amelia, and we decided to go positive psychology, because we're both psychotherapists, and psychotherapy is largely my training, and I think Hannah would agree, had been largely focused on pathology, right? And helping people deal with loss and helping people accept, I don't know, pathology over and over and over again. So we were looking for, what can we do? How can we find, because we wanted to be sure we had research for people too. We don't want to just be like, folksy, we want to be able to convince women that change is possible and that making it up is actually something that is a viable option. We want to be creative. We're both from the theater.
Yeah.
So we wanted a mix of art and science, which is really brings our two backgrounds together. And I also think my social work background, which is a really holistic approach of the person, is useful in that as well. It's like, how do you create community? How do you create all those things that provide people with an opportunity to see possibility and to have a future that they're excited about?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's so fascinating because the way that we even talk about the difference between positive psychology and more traditional psychology focuses on the lens through which you see the world becomes the lens through which you act. And so if your background was clinical and dis-ease and disorders, like, oh my gosh, is after 50 a disease? Is it a disorder? Is it kind of the clinical perspective? And Hannah, I love that you had this glimmer of positive psychology in your eyes, which is, how do we view it through the lens of opportunity? And it is fascinating to think about, like, for example, I'm in my 30s and I'm thinking about, I actually do kind of have a trajectory in front of me. At some point, I will have children, and at some point, I'll get married, and then you have to raise the kids, and da-da-da. And I wonder if people just sort of, the same way that we assumed in traditional psychology that if you got rid of a person's depression and anxiety, that they would suddenly be happy because you got rid of the thing that wasn't working. And then we said, no, happiness is more than just the absence of that. And we would say, well, a person in their 50s doesn't have the being weighed down by their kids or by a career, necessarily having a set career path. They have the sky's the limit for them. Isn't that just great? And you're like, no, that can be debilitating. And so I love that you are offering for people the opportunity to get inspired and empowered by thinking through what's possible for life.
Look, and it's radical to think opportunity for women over 50s, because let's be real. I mean, Hannah's I just had a knee replacement. There's lots of loss, siblings, parents, empty nest. We live in a youth-oriented society. I mean, nobody really looks at a woman in her 50s or 60s. I mean, it's a challenge, that we want to take on, and ageism is a real demon. It's out there. It really, there's a cultural construct of ageism that really narrows the possibilities, So hopefully, Amelia, by the time you get to 50, we will have created all sorts of exciting things. Like, I want women in their 20s right now to say, I can't wait to be 60,
Yeah.
Right?
And
it's what we found is that women over 50 want to do something. They want to be active and engaged and excited about life, but they're also kind of isolated. It's interesting because the social structures that have provided community often shift at this age, whether you're empty nest or your job phases you out or you're downsizing. And so you're moving. And so they're very isolated and looking for an opportunity to connect with people too, who say, yeah, let's do it. Let's do something.
Yeah. And Hannah, I'd love to start with you. Tell us about some of the things that as you start to dive into positive psychology, you start to say, hey, this is really helpful for women over 50. Hey, this is really helping me get more roots into this new plot, you're twisting the plot. We can talk about it as a plot of land. It could be a plot in the story. This new plot of land that I'm stepping into, what did you find was helpful for you?
I think the first thing that jumps out at me was that our mindset is that, tells us that you're just older. You can't do this. You're too old to start a new business. You're supposed to be slowing down. And that idea of that fixed mindset and how to develop a growth mindset so that you have curiosity and opportunity. And I think that is kind of the first really big stumbling block that we came up against, was how to help women understand that that's a possibility, that there's lots of possibility, and how to stay curious.
Look, we had to start with ourselves.
Right, exactly.
It's shocking how much fixed mindset we had about our own potential going forward, right? I mean, it's just, we had to really, we're really trying to walk the walk, right? So, yeah, the idea that you can take risks at this age, right? I mean, a lot of people tell us they look at us like we're crazy because we're saying we're starting a business, we're learning technology. It's just, it really, we've been really helping each other with our mindset also. But, one of the things that, right, Hannah, with mindset that we're trying to work into our workshops, which is our first step, we believe, is the mindset, is like looking at fixed notions and really understanding that you can open those up, like Hannah said, with curiosity, with inquiry. And because we're both theater people, I don't know if you know, in Carol Dweck's book, at the end, she talks about naming your fixed mindset persona. I was so excited when I saw that, because Hannah and I are like, that's all we want to do is do story and create persona. And we want to come at this creatively. But she doesn't say to name and discover a growth mindset persona. So we're sort of like jumping on that and making that one of the things we want to help women do, is to really have a vision of what that would look like, who that would be, give her a name.
And which really requires imagination, which is such a big part of this.
Which is our second main point, right?
You can't move forward without an imagination, and to imagine what being your life over 50 could be like and what it can be filled with. And that's part of that growth mindset persona, is like, let's be creative. Let's figure this out.
I have read cover to cover 3 times Marty Seligman's book, Homo Prospectus, Amelia, because it's like, it's all there, right? Like, any time to create something new, you have to imagine it first. You have to make up something. That's how it's always happened.
And in order to be able to do that, you need a baseline level of positivity, because when you are caught in a place of negative emotions, whether it be physical pain, ouch, this hurts, and you're feeling the physicality of it, or the emotionality of it, whether it be your children are graduating and there's sadness and there's loss, negative emotions by definition just make it a little harder to think creatively and to think optimistically, not because there aren't options and solutions there, simply because that's what emotions do for us. So I would imagine that part of what you are doing to help people get into that creative space is exploring, how do we generate positive emotions?
And help people like sort of embrace the negative ones a little bit, like not to be. And we've had so many women coming to our workshops. It's amazing. Women whose husbands this is the most common one, women whose husbands have left them after 30 years of marriage, and or husbands who have passed after, it's like that one. We're shocked at how often this seems to be a pattern. Women find themselves suddenly alone, suddenly in grief. A lot of women have just losing their parents and suddenly finding themselves, without support systems that they had counted on. So one of the things, and this is, I think, important, Amelia, right? Because people mistake positive psychology as you can only have the happy feelings, you can only have the positive things. No, it's about it's the whole picture, like feeling all your feelings, but having something, having like something that's pulling you forward. Not having the negative feelings become something that you need to run from or hide from or let them diminish you. We want to help women get big. We see women thinking it's time to get small. It's time to slouch. It's time to pull back. It's time. I mean, actually, that's what psychologists used to tell women in their 60s, 50s, 60s, time to withdraw, time to prepare for death. This is not. We've got, if you can do that if you want, but if you want to live to 100 or 120 like I do, then I want to
Which you probably will, right? Because that's what we know about where we're going, and just this idea that people are barely at midway through life by the time that they are getting into their 50s and 60s. And we talk about this in positive psychology a lot, that on the one hand, we love having options because options give us the sense of, possibility that we can do anything. And on the other hand, it's like, well, I can do anything. I don't even know where to begin. And so there's this, on the one hand, there's this possibility of the constriction of what it means to be at this age that I think would be difficult for people. And then on the other hand, it's like, whoa, I can do anything. There's so much I can do with my life. I can reinvent myself. That feels overwhelming too. And so how to just kind of find your own balance and stay in your own lane, right? Like not, and what is my lane to begin with?
Well, that's interesting. Did you want to say?
Okay, go ahead, Hannah.
I was going to say, what's interesting, though, is that we found that as when women stop and listen to themselves, they have more answers to that than we think. They're not as overwhelmed by the massive opportunity. They sort of start to go, oh, you know what? I've always wanted to do this, or I've got a passion about this. And I think you're right. It can be overwhelming, but I think if we can help them stop and listen, the answers are there.
Yeah.
So we've been doing repurposing workshops. We call it repurposing. Repurpose instead of finding your purpose, with the idea that, to sort of counter this idea that we only have one purpose in life, right? That actually you can repurpose. And we use a lot of the exercises that we did with you to help people like uncover, not search for. That sort of speaks to what Hannah was just saying. It's not out there somewhere, it's really something that you can tap into and figure out what to do next. And we've been doing the workshops, right, Hannah? And women usually come up and they're so grateful to us because they said whenever we keep going to these second career workshops where people just teach us how to do resumes, and we know how to do a resume.
We've probably been the one interviewing the people who sent us resumes.
What we don't know is how to figure out, just like you said, out of, how to make art out of the new blank clay. Where, right? We don't know where to start. What do we do? And, and that involves, in order to listen to yourself as a woman over 50, it really does involve stepping outside of a box, and that box we call ageism. It really is stepping. Ellen Langer talks about the science of possibility. Like it's outside. Like you have to be. I think we all have to be outliers. Like we can't look to some sort of formula that's already there. We have to be able to step outside of it and make it up, and then you can craft it. Then we'll help people with goal setting, with other kinds of techniques that we learned how to take action. So we do a mindset workshop, imagination workshop. We do a life review process, but it's not about dredging up your past like it would be in psychotherapy. What we're doing is sort of like restorying, looking at your past and deciding what parts you want to bring with you, what parts you might want to put another twist on. So we had some fun with women doing this. What else, Hannah? What are our other? We're working towards coming up with rituals for women. So rituals to help women embrace change. I don't know. We're playing with some different ideas around that, celebrating.
Yeah. we love the idea that when you think about it, you go through, like, if you want to think from a perspective of menopause, when you go through adolescence, all the discomfort and the acne and the awkwardness and all that, you tolerate with the expectation of maturity and freedom and autonomy and sex and all the good things that come with growing on the other side. But with menopause, there's this just dark black hole beyond, which is one reason we think menopause is perceived so badly. And we'd like to create some rituals and some opportunity to see it as a transition that we celebrate, not that we run from or hide from.
And so, for the women listening, I'm curious what you might suggest they do as even a starting point. Like, for example, would you have them identify what their current limiting beliefs might be around aging? For example, aging means blah, 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 blah. Or would that be a starting point that you would recommend?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea because I think it is, we don't, as when those mindsets, you don't even recognize, it's hard to get to a point where you even see them because they feel so solid. It was a word, that, so I think, yes, starting to catch yourself and saying, wait a minute, wait, that's a mindset. That's not fact. I can do something different. I can see myself in a different way.
Yeah, that's a story I'm telling myself, right? I think sometimes
Exactly.
people get so caught up on these words that are, a little psycho jargon, right? We're so familiar saying things like mindset or belief system. So really it's like a story. It's a story that we tell ourselves, which you guys are experts in is as drama therapists, is to kind of uncover and rewrite the story.
Right. I think that I feel like another great starting point is just starting to ask yourself, like, what else? Like, forget the how, forget the, is it practical? Is it just, what else might I want to do? And I think the question is, who else might I want to be? That one excites us the most, we've found. Like, what I want to do. Women are good at figuring out what to do. Harder, I think we're sort of conditioned to think about doing things for other people quite often, or, but what about who else could I be? I just love this question. Who am I becoming is what we keep saying. Like thinking about becoming, not aging. Like, what comes to mind? Even if it feels really, far-fetched or, fantasy, like just allow it. Just allow it. It's it's exciting. It's fun.
Yeah, it's like letting yourself daydream about it, fantasize. What could it be like? Which I don't think we do very often.
Yeah, I think people just sort of expect that they could get to the idea of having clarity on what they want to do without understanding that there is a baseline level of positivity that's sort of needed and a safety needed to just be able to dream. And I say this all the time with clients that I coach, that they come in and they're like, I think about what I want to do with my life and I just see an empty screen. And it makes sense that they're seeing an empty screen. They might have felt frustrated, they're feeling overwhelmed, they're feeling worried about their finances, whatever it might be. And so simply helping them understand that the reason that the screen seems blank is may simply be because they have negative emotions present, which means that they're narrowed and focused. Does not mean that there aren't ideas out there. There isn't possibility, but when you just expect that you're going to get clarity as opposed to the unfolding process that requires patience and curiosity, and sometimes other people to walk the path with you. That's why I love that you're offering to people this idea of group experiences, because so often we try to go at this alone, but it's hard to read the label when you're stuck inside the jar. It's hard to be in a positive, curious space when you're alone with your own brain and your own inner critic as the only form of feedback for this. And the fact that we need other people in order to feel like we matter. And so much of this is about helping people feel that they belong to society, that they matter, that what they do matters.
Mm-hmm. I mean, listen, we have slides and worksheets, and we go prepared for our workshops, and the women just walk in the room and they just can't stop talking. It's like they're so happy to be in a room of other women in this realm of possibility and sharing their stories. Permission, I guess, maybe they feel this permission too to, like, not only talk about the things that have happened in their lives that they have negative feelings about, but there's this permission to hope, permission to change. We've had women tell us that permission is even a little scary to them, because what if who they want to be is not what their their families want them to be, or not what, it's really, I feel like, Hannah, we should think about that. It's really, the permission piece is huge. Hannah and I have always been creative in our lives, but we noticed that we had stopped dreaming. Suddenly we weren't being creative. Suddenly we weren't, conjuring up new ideas and new plans. And that's, I'm like the dreamer lady. I dreamed more than did. My mother said there were two kinds of people in the world: doers and dreamers. She's from New Hampshire. And she said, you, my dear, are a dreamer. So I said, Hannah, I'm not a dreamer anymore,
Right. But I think also there's what you said, Amelia, is so true, that we need that community support and that opportunity of people around us to say, keep going, keep trying. And one of the things that's been fun about starting a business together was, one of us has a day where we're like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. And the other one goes, no, we can do it. We got it, And I always think, even if you're just an entrepreneur, you need people around you who go, no, it's a good idea. Keep going. You can do it. I love when you did this. I got your back, and that's what that group of women together starting to support each other and hear each other is so valuable.
And Amelia, the thing about Hannah is that I always used to say this, like, sometimes when bad things happen to me, like really, like or if I trip or fall in the middle of the street, my skirt goes up or whatever, like really the most humiliating things that have happened to me, my first thought always is, I cannot wait to tell Hannah, because she will just start laughing hysterically. And usually she has this like, anyway, so it just makes me feel like everything's okay because we can laugh about it. So we've had to do a lot of laughing through this process too.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we do a lot of laughing in our workshops, don't you think, Hannah? Like the
Absolutely.
women have found it really fun. And,
I think laughter, fun is so important.
Humor.
There's enormous intimacy in humor, in the connection you make with someone when you can laugh together.
As we start to wind down our time together, tell us more about how people can get involved with what you're doing.
Well, that's great. We are about to launch in January our new website, Twisting the Plot, which we've really designed. We want it to be more interactive, because what we really want to do is get people involved. There's kind of three ways to go about it. One way is to sign up. We'll have a newsletter that'll go out on a regular basis with inspiration and ideas for people to get in their mailbox and get excited about making change and looking at this stage of life in a new way. Then we'll have the podcast and writing that we're doing. So there's blogs and we're working on our book. And then there's, and eventually the podcast, which we'll launch a little bit later. And then we're working on a book. And as well, another opportunity for people to interact with us will be the workshops, where they can come and meet other people who are excited about making opportunities of this stage of life and meet us. Also
on our website, we have some awesome resources that will be free that you can get, that we've put together. And we have, we're inviting women to send us their stories, send us stories about their twists, how they've twisted their plots, how their plots have been twisted for them. And so we want to start collecting women's stories and sharing them back. We really want this to be a cultural change. We know that we want each woman to feel like they're going to change in their own unique way individually, but overall, we want to put new maps out there in the culture. So we have opportunities for women to share with us also on the website.
A way for us to really show that there's a diversity out there, and we really want to celebrate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for helping women and men out there, whether you're in your 50s and 60s reinventing yourself, or you're just thinking about how your own limiting beliefs might be holding you back in any way, in any stage of your life. Your message of empowerment and curiosity and openness and creativity is such an inspiration, and I'm so excited to see what you will continue to create, because already it has made such a positive impact in the world.
Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you, Amelia.
Thank you for everything you taught us.
Thank you, ladies.
This practitioner profile episode is brought to you by the Certificate in Applied Positive Psychology program, the world's fastest growing practitioner training with over 15 programs running every year in 5 cities and online internationally. Discover how you too can turn your passion for well-being, science, and helping others into a career where you help people thrive. Learn more about how you can become a certified positive psychology practitioner at getcertifiedinpp.com.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I want to encourage you to tell us, what would you love to hear more about? Is there an area of positive psychology you would love to get some more information on in terms of the research? Give us a shout out at info@theflourishingcenter.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I wish you a wonderful, flourishing day.